why most short-term rental operators are failing in the short-term rental business. That's going to be the subject of this video. Welcome, my beautiful people. Fernando David here. And today I'm going to be talking about a podcast that I just finished watching with Bill Faeth and Pace Morby. Whether you know these two or not, it's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that Bill Faeth is an operator in the short-term rental business that I firmly believe you should be following and taking advice from, right? If you follow this channel or subscribe to this channel, you know that I am one of those people that believes that the majority of people or the majority of short-term rental operators that call themselves experts, because that's the key here. A lot of these short-term rental operators call themselves expert in short-term rentals, and in fact, they're really not. They may be experts in their particular region or particular area and may have a particular niche, but for me, an expert is someone that understands business, understands what it takes to run a successful short-term rental business, and can do so not just in one region, but in many regions, right? So without further ado, let's dive right in and let me cue the first question. So here we go.
Routine says Airbnb is dead. What is your answer to that question?
I say it is.
Oh,
for about 60 to 70% of the industry,
okay,
that's doing the exact same thing they did during COVID, which is buy a property in any town USA, putting a couple of bucks into renovation, and then going back to being a dentist or whatever they do.
First of all, throughout this video, Bill Faeth is going to be spitting not only gold, like gold nuggets, but he is going to be spitting truth, right? And what he just said is one of the most truth statements out there. I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say this. Today, many people that enter the short-term rental game, when the short-term rental game was at its peak, which was, in my opinion, at its peak, it was between 2021 and 2022. A lot of people jumped on the short-term rental bandwagon during that time because I'm here to tell you it didn't matter what you put on Airbnb or any OTA platform, it was going to produce, right? Because back, we still had low inventory. We're getting out of COVID. People were traveling. There was a lot of factors that made the short-term rental game explode during that time. There was a lot of people that did that. But a lot of people did what Bill Faeth just said. A lot of people just bought anything. They put it on the market with minimal work and minimal consideration of what it takes to run a successful business. And many were doing it, were trying to do it part-time because many were listening to these gurus that said that the short-term rental game was easy, it was profitable. There was a lot of people popping up and a lot of YouTubers were out there preaching short-term rentals and how easy it was, how profitable it was, etc. So let's continue to see what he says.
Stays that are above the average. All my Airbnbs that I've gotten rid of are exactly what you just said. I bought a property anywhere USA. Oh, it doesn't cash flow as a rental? Cool. I'll turn it into an Airbnb.
Well, you could spend $500,000 in Atlanta as an example and generate $125,000, but now that's probably a $60,000 to $70,000 property,
right?
And you're probably barely able to break even. If you're doing regular financing, if you're doing what you specialize in, you're probably able to turn a profit. But
yeah,
okay, let's talk about what he just said. Now, here's what's important, right? And what he just said was going on with a lot of people, and this is what was going on. A lot of people were buying properties 2020, 2021, 2022. These wannabe investors were getting into the game, were realizing that long-term, the property didn't profit long-term, which in my opinion, they should have never bought it. And I'll touch on that in a second. And then they switched, or they converted that property to short-term because short-term during that time frame was making more money than long-term. Now, and I think Bill's going to talk about it, but I don't know if I'm actually going to show it. But here's what's really important here. When you're considering buying a short-term or investing in a short-term rental, and for me, you better make sure that that property is going to cash flow as a long-term rental, because if it cash flows as a long-term rental, then you're going to be fine as a short-term rental. What happened for many people was that it wasn't cash flowing as a long-term rental. They switched to short-term rental. We're doing fine in 2020, 21, and 22. But 2023 came around when the market stabilized and actually started getting realistic numbers, and they weren't cash flowing, right? So let's continue with this, because that's what he just said is really important.
You use the word influencers. There's a lot of influencers in the Airbnb space, and they're selling the 4-hour work week. Yeah. They're selling the automation of just VA this, VA that. And as Chris knows, who's been with me for 7 years, so he's seen the whole maturation through this.
Dang, bro, ever since you got a driver's license? It
takes work.
Yeah.
So if you do long-term rents or midterm, I mean, there's work to get started, but then you still got to do maintenance and stuff, but you don't have to do revenue management. You don't have to do ongoing marketing. It's like any other business. That's where I'm a little bit different.
Okay. That's the other component that a lot of STR operators fail to realize, because they're listening to these influencers that sell that 4-hour work week, like Bill Faeth said. And I talked about it earlier, right? There's a lot of people out there that are selling you their coaching program. They're selling you, buy my book and you're going to be fine. They're telling you that you can make all this money part-time. People, I don't understand why a lot of you are so gullible. Nothing. I don't think there's a single business that you're going to make a lot of money in part-time. Sorry to break it to you. It doesn't exist. But in the STR business, and this is why a lot of people are getting out of STR, is because it's a lot of freaking work. And I've said this before, but I want you guys to really understand. There's real estate investors that invest in long-term rentals for cash flow. Right? That's what I refer as the true real estate investor, because they're investing in the real estate and they're creating cash flow through long-term rentals. Airbnb is really, or the STR business is really not necessarily a real estate job. It is a hospitality job or a hospitality business, right? You can be like Bill Faeth and like myself and invest in real estate or buy real estate and convert that real estate into a short-term rental, but and technically you are a real estate investor, but you're not in the real estate business. You're in the hospitality business. You guys really need to understand that you are in the hospitality business. You're in the people business, right? So it's a lot more work, it takes a lot more to run a short-term rental than does a long-term rental. I've done videos on this, so I'm not really going to dive too much into it, but really, you really need to understand that, people. All right, let's move on to the next.
I'd done 31 startups before I started doing this, and I applied the standard business principles. So for me, sales and marketing is almost more important than product or service in most cases.
Agreed.
And
think about that for people that are out there that don't understand why he would say that. Is think about, there's better products out there. Frequently, there's better products. But if they don't have sales and marketing, who freaking cares? It's not going to ever make it to the market.
100%.
That is another big gold brick, people. All right. So again, if you follow this channel, I'm going to repeat myself. of a lot of stuff that I've been saying, and he just said it, right? And I always use the analogy of McDonald's, right? McDonald's, and I don't know the numbers anymore. I used to follow this, but that used to be, they may still be, the number one hamburger, or they sold the most hamburger in the world. They don't have the best hamburger, people. But because of their systems, their processes, and their marketing, right? I'm going to say that again. Because of their systems and their process and their marketing, McDonald's sells the most hamburgers in the world, right? We're going to talk about Starbucks. Starbucks sells the most coffee in the world. I don't think Starbucks coffee is any good, but because of their marketing, they do very well, right? If you're in the STR business, right? Marketing is the most important component. You can have the best property with the best amenities. If you're not marketing that property correctly, no one's going to book it, right? Or on the flip side, listen, I have a large portfolio and I manage property for other people. And some of the properties that I manage are not A+ properties. They're more like C properties. They're not in the best neighborhoods, but we do our best and with what we got. But they do well because we market the crap out of these properties. We spend more time in marketing than we spend in any other component of the business. In fact, I personally spend the majority of my time focused on with the marketing team than any other team in my business. Because without a customer, you have no business. So that's hugely important. And Bill is the first and only STR operator besides me that talks about marketing. I don't know any other STR operator out there that talks, well, some talk a little bit, but most talk about optimizing their listing, about having the correct photo. People, marketing is the most important component, right? Let's move on.
Better products. But if they don't have sales and marketing, who freaking cares? It's not going to ever make it to the market.
100%.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
So I spend the majority of my time for my owned portfolio, and then I'm a co-host, so I manage some properties too, on sales and marketing. And sure, and people think that I kind of branded the term, you have sub 2, I'm super property, super portfolio, super life, right?
Yes.
But there's also, I'm writing a book and it's called 2 Extra Steps. I'm the guy that's made my wealth out of doing the stuff that other people are too lazy or unwilling to do.
Dude, I was thinking about this morning. Here it is Saturday, right? You and I are filming. You flew in to do a podcast with me. And I'm sitting here thinking about this one-on-one I did with this guy this morning off Instagram. He sends me a DM. Every once in a while, I'll just go, that's a really interesting question. You obviously are stuck. If I do a one-on-one with you, I can take that content and send it to 100,000 other people that have the same problem. So he's just mentally stuck.
And what did you charge him to do that?
Nothing. Zero.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just like, I go, if I can answer your question and also I can learn your problem and where you're stuck, I can help other people. And this will actually educate me on how to, how to communicate with you on the level you're at, meeting you where you're at. Basically, the problem that he's in right now is that he just doesn't do 2 extra steps. He does exactly what the status quo is, nothing more. He's not willing to wake up early. He's not willing to work a Saturday or Sunday. His 9 to 5 is, 9 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then he says, I have no other time to do anything else. I'm so busy. I'm like, busy with what? I don't know. I'm busy. I don't have any other time. I'm like,
how many people are in your position making the money, the wealth, the family, the portfolio, the hundreds of thousands of students in your community that are going to have somebody in their house on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m.?
Nobody.
When I listen to that, I just laugh because there's a lot of people and a lot of gurus out there that will tell you, get in the real estate game. You're going to have better work-life balance, right? Or a lot of people that talk about work-life balance, which is fine for 99% of you guys, right? 99% of you guys, you want work-life balance. You can get a 9 to 5, whatever. But if you want to be the best, if you want to run a short-term rental business and be successful at it, and I'm not just talking about short-term rental businesses, I'm talking about any business or anything, doesn't matter whether you're an athlete or you're a W-2 employee, it doesn't matter. If you want to be number one, if you want to succeed in this life, there's going to be sacrifices that need to be made. Listen, I tell the story about me. When I started this company, for 2 years, I made zero money. For 2 years, I took no vacations, worked every day from 6 a.m. to 10, 11 o'clock at night, every freaking day for 2 years. My family, my friends, all were telling me that I was crazy. That why am I sacrificing all this? I was getting pushback from a lot of people. But at the end of the day, right now, all those people that gave me pushback, right now, all those people are coming to me and asking me how I did it. Well, all those people think I did this overnight. No, man. I've been doing this for years, and working my butt, and I still work my butt off every single day. I also talk about, companies like Blockbuster, like Sears, man. They were at the top of their game for a long time, but they're not around anymore. See, and that's my fear. That's my driver. That if I don't do what I need to get done every single day, that at some point, if I sit back on my laurels or say I made it, I don't have to do what I used to do to get to continue to be successful, that tomorrow my business won't exist, right? Now, it ain't for everyone. Not everyone's cut out to be a CEO or a business owner. Not everyone's cut out for that. Listen, I get it. I want to repeat what I said. I made a lot of sacrifices in my life. My family suffered as a result, suffered in the sense that they didn't have me on a regular basis like most people have, right? But again, my goal was to grow this business to what it is today. And that took work, people. That's the key component. It takes work. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. Oh, I'm loving this. Dude, when I watched this podcast, I fell in love with this podcast because they're speaking truth, people.
Like, what does that mean?
2 extra steps means I do the stuff that my competitors in the marketplace don't do.
What's a good example?
Number one, I see every property that I purchase in person.
Okay.
At least twice before I close on it. So one, to identify it, and two, that I'm usually there the week after to meet and you're an ex-construction guy, right? To meet the inspector, have my contractor there, do the extra inspections. Like Jerry got to see my house in Montana, but the new one I bought, it has a pond, it had a creek. There was two dwellings on it, 5.5 acres, just verify zoning, especially in a place rural like Montana. All these things that you have to go through, roof, hot tubs, all that stuff. Most people just mail it in and rely on the home inspection, and they buy sight unseen.
Yeah, and also I would imagine on number one example, you're probably driving around.
He talks about doing more than others, and I said that in the very beginning when we started this video. Those that are successful in this business do more than those, it's, for me, it's like a little common sense, right? He does more work, more research, does the little things or the little details matter to him, right? Matters to me. But today, more so than any time in the history of short-term, in the business of short-term rental, today, taking the extra step. Now, he talked about visiting properties. For me, that's not what that is not that's one area that I'm not necessarily in line with him. I don't need to visit a property. I can have my team visit the property. Now, before we make the decision to actually buy that property, I will visit the property. But initially, I don't need to be there. He says he visited the property twice. I don't need to do a lot of that stuff. For me, going the extra mile in the short-term rental business is not necessarily doing going the extra mile in due diligence when you're buying a property, which is important. But for me, that extra mile needs to happen with the guest, right? You need to. I read a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. Highly recommend you read that book. I did a video on that book. You can search it. But if you're in this business, you should read Unreasonable Hospitality. And the reason why that it made a huge impact in me because that's where this business lacks. And I'm going to give you an example. Before getting into the short-term rental game, because of my prior life and what I did in my prior life, I did a lot of traveling. And I spent a lot of times in hotels, specifically Marriott hotels. And one of the things that I learned with the Marriott brand is that they had a consistent theme, a consistent pattern of expressing what true hospitality is. From the odor of the hotel, I don't know if you ever recognize this, but there's certain businesses like Marriott. Another one that comes to mind is Victoria's Secret. When you go into that business, they have an odor that's distinct to them, meaning the scents that they put out, right? Because they want to touch all, they want to make sure they hit all senses: your visual, your touch, your taste, all that stuff comes into play because Marriott understands that being unreasonable with their hospitality is what makes Marriott, right? When you go to a Ritz, when you go to a JW, you really see what true hospitality is, from the little details. That's where, in my opinion, that's where we succeed because those little details are really important to us, and we understand that because it gives that guest experience another level that most of them are not accustomed to. And that's where I think the short-term rental industry really lacks, right? There's very little consistency. If you stay in one of our properties and you stay in another property that isn't us, and then you stay on another property that wasn't owned or operated by that other person, you're going to have a completely different experience throughout your short-term rental experiences, right? There's not a lot of consistency there. But if we all stepped up our game and just a little extra, I mean, I'm going to give you an example. Like I recently posted this on my Instagram and on my threads. So, for example, when we have a repeat customer, someone that's coming back for the second, third, fourth, fifth time, doesn't matter. But if they're a repeat customer, we go beyond what we do for the average customer. So I'm going to give you an example. When you visit our properties, you're going to have a welcome gift. Most of the time for us is a bottle of wine. And this is extra to what you normally get, right? You're going to have a very clean house. You're going to have a lot of communication for us. You're going to have a digital guidebook, but you're going to get a gift from us. But if you're a repeat guest, that gift gets compounded, right? We normally give you the bottle of wine that we give everyone, but we'll give you chocolates. We write a handwritten note welcoming you back. We make sure we put flowers out. We make sure that you get a higher level experience that you did the first time, because you want to one-up yourself, or at least that's my opinion. You want to one-up yourself to give that guest the desire to come back, right? They experienced you the first time. They loved what you did. That's why they came back. But when you take it to the next level, man, that really creates that loyalty that you want in this industry. Direct bookings is really important for the success of your business. But one of the ways you get direct bookings is through repeat customers and marketing them. And again, going back to marketing. But when a guest has a phenomenal experience on your property, they will not only be repeat customers, but they will brag about you. They will tell their friends, their family members about you. That one guest can mean thousands of dollars of repeat customers because that guest felt welcome. They felt like they were part of the family. They felt like you were considerate and met their needs, right? Hugely important. Let's move on.
Right.
Okay, awesome.
So I have a spreadsheet, right? And it's basically my comp analysis, not like using AirDNA and the tools that are out there, not the data sets, but I go through and number one, the first thing I'm doing when I look at a property is I'm rating it. Location, views, proximity, amenities outside, what I can do, design, just the overall aspect. There's like 9 things on my checklist. And the most important one that makes or breaks it, and Chris has been with me a million times, my wife has been with me a million times when I've done this, is I have to visualize what's the hero image on my Airbnb listing.
Hero image, guys, write that down. Hero
Another gold nugget, right? So, and I think this is great advice. And I do the same thing. Now, he's going to talk about another step that he takes that I am, it's like my number one step. But now this is going the extra mile. This is what's really important, because when you look at a property, you have to look at it from the lens, from a marketing component lens, meaning how can I market this property? What's going to be the key amenity that I can sell to the public, right? And this is where a lot of people make a mistake. This is and it's hugely important right here, what I'm about to say, what he just said, right? A lot of people, when they're going to buy a property, they look at the property from a lens of, they look at the property from their perspective and their lens. Do I like it? Would I live here, right? That's how they're looking at it. They envision themselves on that property. But I think that's a mistake, right? You have to look at a property from the guest perspective. You have to look at the property from a marketing perspective, more importantly, right? Again, can I market this? What am I going to market this? What am I going to use to market it? Is it going to be the unique kitchen? Something unique, right? Everyone has a lot of properties, a lot of Airbnbs have beautiful kitchens, beautiful living rooms. You have to stand out. So the property has to have something that's unique that you can market. And I won't go any further because he's going to talk about the next step that's probably more important. And for me, and if you follow this channel, you should know the answer to this because I talk about this all the time. But let's hear him out real quick.
Hero image. If I run a Facebook ad, what's that first ad or first image in the carousel, or what's the video going to be?
It's not always the same room, I imagine.
It's never a room. It's always outside.
It's always outside.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was fortunate enough to come by and see your place, when you had camp there, and, your house is amazing. The garage is amazing, but I'm going to put the focal point on the exterior activity because nobody's going to Montana to stay in your freaking house. Don't care how nice it is, right? We want to be outside. You come here during the winter, you want to be hiking, Pinnacle Peak, you want to be playing golf, that type of stuff. So for me, it's always focusing on the outside.
I hope you knew that answer. I hope you knew that the most important component of a short-term rental property is not the interior, it's the exterior. And I don't understand why people don't get that concept. We've been super successful because we have focused on the exterior properties. Like Bill said, no one wants to spend time indoors. They want to go outside. So if you follow this channel, you know that where I'm at today is my vineyard. And we are creating and spending a lot of money not on the interior of any of this house or the dome that we're building or the cottage that we're building or the barnuminium that we're building. We're going to make those beautiful, but that's not where our money's going. Our money's going on the outside. I've talked about this and I've done a lot of videos on it. We created mountain bike trails. We created ATV trails, horseback trails. We're on a vineyard. The focal point is going to be the wine, right? The grapes. We're putting in fruit trees, blackberry, blueberry, raspberry bushes, so that when someone spends time here, they can just walk out their door, go out there and pick their blueberries, blackberries. We're going to be putting fruit trees like fig trees, citrus trees, pecan that grows really well here. You're going to have the ability to do that. We have archery. We have e-bikes, mountain bikes for those that are not super fit, and that because our trails are kind of tough. But for those that are not super fit and they want to ride the trails, they can hop on the e-bike, right? I mean, we are creating a outdoor experience that no one's going to want to leave the property, right? That's what we're building here. That's what he's talking about. Spend money on the outside so that people don't have to spend time indoor because nobody wants to do that, but they can go out there, play, socialize. He talked about golf. You know, you have to look at this. If you're buying a residential home in a neighborhood, which I recommend that that's not where we're investing in. But if you're going to buy in a residential neighborhood, and he's going to talk about this in a little bit, but I'm going to jump ahead. Look at what's around it. What's the amenities? What are the restaurants? What are the bars? You know, what can people do, either walking distance or a short car ride? What's available, and market that. That is, I can't tell you how many. I mean, I challenge you to go on Airbnb right now and pick a property and see if how many have pictures, descriptions of what activities are available near their property. And you're going to find out there's very few that do that. And I think that's a huge mistake. All right, let's move on.
Optimization, direct booking, all that stuff. So it's completely different approach, and you have to take those 2 extra steps because you can't set it and forget it.
Do you think that the reason why you have to do these 2 extra steps is because the lobbyists and hotel, like my outside perspective, because I'm not an Airbnb expert at all. I'm actually one of those idiots that did exactly what you said, which was like just buy properties, throw some random Amazon design.
I did too. It was easy.
Well, you had to learn to get to where
right,
you're at.
Right.
But I screwed up all of those things. But what I've noticed is these hotels over the last 10 years have amplified everything.
100%.
And they have made their experiences competitive to Airbnb. And so it sounds like it's forcing the Airbnb model to go above and beyond and become super properties.
It depends where you're at. So okay. I live south of Nashville. Fortunately, I was in the ground transportation space prior to doing this. Built a $10 million limousine and bus company.
Nice.
And in 11, 12, 13, before I exited, I was at city council meetings every week. I'm battling Uber. You know, Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber, came in and took over the entire world by operating illegally. But he got public sentiment on his side, and then we couldn't lobby against him, right? It. And as a tremendous, I hated it then, but it was a tremendous strategy.
You got to respect the guy.
So what happened is, in Nashville, I live in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and it's a very red state, not to get into politics, but it's probably the bluest city politically in the entire country, bluer than San Francisco. So there's this whole issue with state regulation, local regulation. And as I was at these city council meetings, I started seeing, I was not into Airbnb yet. I started seeing these B&B bills that were coming up. And it was it was the number 1 city in the country in the world from 13 to 18, according to AirDNA and Airbnb for short-term rentals. Wow. I never invested. I had long-terms, condos, that type of stuff. But
okay, here we go, people. We're going to talk about regulation. I think every video I do and I've done in the last 6 months had some component with regulation. Now, here's some key things that you need to write down that he just talked about, right? Pace asked him a question regarding, he said, hey, I was one of those people that bought a property in, anywhere, and put it up without really considering a lot of the factors. And his response was it depends. And it truly does depend, right? And here's what it depends on. Now, he talks about it later. I'm not going to show it, but he talks about his properties. His properties are not in major cities. His properties are in rural areas, Montana. Actually, I'll show you the video in a second where he talks about where his properties are, because I forgot where all of them are, but they're not in rural areas. They're not in known cities. He's investing in where I'm investing. If you follow this channel, I've talked about this, right? Right now, we're spending a lot of time, effort, and money in rural areas and areas that are not known, areas that I believe are going to be up and coming areas. So, for example, this property, it's in South Georgia. It's in a small town. Actually, we're not in the town, we're in the county, but the closest city is Nashville, Georgia. Nobody knows Nashville, Georgia. They know Nashville, Tennessee, but they don't know Nashville, Georgia. But this place, I firmly believe, is going, in a couple of years, it's going to boom. And I want to provide a completely unique experience that you're not going to experience anywhere else. Now, I'm going to give the credit to Doug Schoen. He owns Timbercraft Tiny Homes. And he has a small couples resort in Gunther, Alabama, right? Again, it's Gunther, Alabama. When I first met him and talked to him about this couple resort, I'm like, I never even heard of Gunther, Alabama. There's no international airport. There's nothing close by. The town itself is a cute town, but I never heard of it. There's no major attractions. Man, does that place do well. And it's a beautiful resort. Now, hence, that's where I took the idea of this place, right? We have a lot to offer here, but everything we offer here is going to be unique. You're not going to be able to do what you can do here anywhere else. So, and he's going to talk about this in a second. And I mentioned it earlier. I'm not a fan anymore of buying or investing. You can buy depending on the investor who you are. But if you're going to get into this game, I don't think that your money should be in a major city, because I've been talking about regulations all the time. If you're new, you're going to struggle. It's not going to hurt companies like mine or big companies, because we can afford to pay the extra fees, we have the staffing to get the licensing, and we can manage in these major cities. But a new investor, what I refer to mom and pop operator, to manage and be successful in, let's say, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, very difficult to do. If you're going to do that, don't try to do it yourself. And I'm going to pitch my company now. Hire a professional management company that specializes in short-term rental, so that you can at least make some money on that property. And make sure when you're interviewing these management companies, number one, that they specialize in short-term rental, but that they have a focus in marketing. There's a lot of great management companies. They're going to take care of your property. I don't take that away from a lot of these management companies. They will do a good job taking care of the property. But the question is, can they market your property and put money in your pocket? And I'm here to tell you that most can't. So let's move on. Next.
I think there is 100% what you're saying in metropolitan areas, suburban areas. When you're at places like I'm at in Whitefish, Montana, in Banner Elk, North Carolina, which most people haven't heard of, right? I'm in these secondary markets. Why did I go to Whitefish? Because I didn't want to go to Big Sky, right? So I can buy cheaper in Whitefish, get bigger, get better, all that type of stuff. But I do not go to Scottsdale. Look what happened with Scottsdale with the Airbnb a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Your maximum 6 guests when you have a 7-bedroom, $3 million place in, Old Town or whatever.
Or these guys that are like in Paradise Valley that buy these massive 20,000 square foot homes that were crushing it, and they had these big parties and bachelor things and like people would book these houses for weddings and all sorts of things. Now those things are getting hurt.
100%. So I think the biggest risk to our business and this side of real estate is regulation.
Yeah.
I think the second biggest risk is lack of consistency. I mean, if you stay at short-term rentals, you stay at Airbnbs. I mean,
You're saying lack of consistency across
from a guest stay standpoint.
Got it. Okay. So I go to one Airbnb here, and then I go to somebody else's Airbnb, and it's like dramatic different
100%.
experience. Okay, got it.
I mean, so dude, you travel way more than I do, and I think I'm ridiculous.
I forgot he had said that, but he just talked about it. I already talked about being consistent, and I used Marriott as an example, so I'm not going to touch on that. But I am going to talk about regulation, right? He talked about regulation. He talked about Scottsdale. Right now, Madrid, Barcelona. We talked about New York City. Right now, luckily in South Florida, they're not super strict, but every city in South Florida right now has some type of regulation related to short-term rentals. So, and he mentioned like I never really got into the big luxury market for short-term rentals. I never thought that was going to work, and clearly it doesn't. And he just talked about how it's not working anymore. But you know, the biggest risk that we have in this industry is going to be regulations. Hence why I am investing in secondary markets just like he is, and I am being a participant in the community. And here's what I mean by that. You should be an active participant in what's going on in the community you're in. You should have a say in what happens in these communities. So, like, for example, the couple of areas that we're investing in, which is Georgia, North Carolina. I just saw a beautiful property in South Carolina. Stay tuned because I'm going to go visit that. Hopefully I can buy that property. It is a beautiful property, but I've regressed. Let me get back on topic. North Carolina, right? All these secondary markets that don't have any current regulation in, but I'm buying in there, but I'm not just going to set up shop and not be an active participant in the community. That's a huge mistake, because then regulations can come in and may not be favorable to me. The other thing that I'm doing, and I've talked about this before, is that I am getting a business license with the hotel, motel, or campsite, glamping site moniker with it. So regardless of what happens, I will have the license to operate my business legally, and I don't care what happens with the regulations, I'm going to be grandfathered in. Hugely important, people. Hugely important. Now, I think that's the last one that I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Yeah, correct. All right, guys. If you have any questions, comments, list them below. Watch the full podcast. They give a lot of information. Go to Morby's channel and watch that full podcast so you can get more of a context of what's related to the two-step process that Bill Faeth talks about. Now, I'm trying to get Bill Faeth on my podcast. So if you're watching, Bill, I'm waiting for the date. You said you were going to come on. I give me that date. I need that date, brother. Anyway, subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed. Follow me on Instagram. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.